Hello, friends. Welcome to the weekly current affair analysis from May 1 to May 7th. So, these are the topics that we'll be discussing. Index, what we have here G20, India China line of actual control, LIGO, CCTV and Crime, Washington Declaration, trouble in Manipur, groupings, higher pay of pension and Supreme Court, map work, Vostro Account, Russia Europe oil, cattle smuggling, drug resistant TB, respiratory syncytial virus, AI and internal security, EU's Artificial Intelligence Act, smart metering, Project Sanjay, EU carbon tax, service sector uptick, Mocha, Cyclone in Bay of Bengal. Labor laws, Supreme Court Article 142 and diverse, gig worker, constitutional punctuality, governor versus state legislature, psychedelic drugs, gray areas in law banning prenatal sex determination, Shilabhattarika and her poetry, India and SDG. As you can clearly see, it's a very comprehensive list. So without any further delay, I'm going to start off with the first thing, which is basically in shorts news. So in shorts news is not part of the index. These are like basically small capsules which you can use in your general studies paper as well as in your optional paper. So let us see that now. 250 school weather stations. What is it about? It is a breakthrough that paves the way for a future in which area-specific or micro-weather data will be collected through school-based weather stations to understand conditions to predict a pattern and possibly avoid crisis-like situations. These efforts are underway in around 250 schools in the state through a program under Samagra Shiksha, Kerala, under the General Education Department in collaboration with the Advanced Center for Atmospheric Radar Research, Cochin University of Science and Technology. So, in addition to developing studies of weather in a micro manner, it will also invoke what interest in the field of weather and related sciences. Clear? Moving on to the very first topic, G20, India, China, and LAC. So basically, in this last 1 week, May 1 to May 7, we can clearly see there was a lot of coverage with regard to Pakistan, China, vote to press ahead with CPEC, Jaishankar discusses LAC with Kin, China will want to make India's US ties costly. All these were some of the major news. Back to back, we were getting more news coverage on this particular topic. So it is only natural that we need to cover it a little more holistically, starting with we need to have a clear understanding about the eastern sector, central sector, and western sector of the borders. So these are the important things. Here we should have a clear understanding about what is the present situation. That even though the map shows, Indian map does show, the reality is that illegally Pakistan has occupied Kashmir, POK. China also has held on to COK, which we lost again during what? Which we lost again during the 1962 war. And then the remaining is what is left out with us, which is basically the Union Territory of Ladakh and the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Clear, people? So now let us look into the details of it. The LAC is the demarcation that separates India-controlled territory from Chinese-controlled territory. India considers the LAC to be 3,488 km long, while the Chinese consider it to be only around 2,000 km. It is divided into three sectors: the eastern sector, which spans Arunachal Pradesh and Sikkim, the middle sector in Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh, and the western sector in Ladakh. The alignment of the LAC in the eastern sector is along the 1914 McMahon line, and there are minor disputes about the positions on the ground as per the principle of the High Himalayan watershed. This pertains to India's international boundary as well as but for certain areas such as Longju and Asafila. This will become more clear. So this region here, there is a dispute again because Chinese are not ready to accept the McMahon line. That is the interesting part here. Clear. They are not ready to accept anything that has been decided by colonial interests. Clear. And do they have a map to actually show which region belongs to them? No. What are they in turn claiming? They are claiming the whole of Arunachal Pradesh as South Tibet. Now tell me, how can we agree to this? And is this backed by any map? Absolutely not. There is no map to validate the claims of China. Clear, people? The line in the middle sector is the least controversial, but for the precise alignment to be followed in the Barahoti Plains. The Chinese Prime Minister Zhou Enlai said the LAC consisted of the so-called McMahon line in the east and the line up to which each side exercises actual control in the west. After the 1962 war, the Chinese claimed they had withdrawn to 20 kilometers behind the LAC of November 1959. India had rejected the concept of LAC both in 1959 and 1962. So what you should understand here is LAC is actually what? Nothing but a creation of the Chinese. There is nothing hard and fast or blanket wrapped about LAC. That we'll get to know that better now. India's objection was that the Chinese line was a disconnected series of points on a map that could be joined up in many ways. The line should omit gains from aggression in 1962 and therefore should be based on the actual position on September in 1962 before the Chinese attack. And the vagueness of the Chinese definition left it open for China to continue its creeping attempt to change facts on the ground by military force. Now, this is the interesting point here. It's just nothing but the LAC also, even if you see, it is nothing but what? A series of dots. Now, because it is a series of dots, what is the thing? Advantage for China? Advantage for China is China, as and when it pleases, can redraw the map however it wants. How? And how do they redraw it? They redraw it using their Chinese military. Clear, people? Then, what are the other updates? PM Rajiv Gandhi visited Beijing in 1988, and pending that, they would maintain peace and tranquility along border. India formally accepted the concept of LAC when Rao paid a return visit to Beijing in 1993, and the two sides signed the agreement to maintain peace and tranquility at the line of actual control. The reference to the LAC was unqualified to make it clear that it was not referring to the LAC of 59 or 62, but to the LAC at the time when the agreement was signed. To reconcile the differences about some areas, the two countries agreed that the joint working group on the border issue would take up the task of clarifying the alignment of the LAC. During his visit to China in May 2015, PM Narendra Modi's proposal to clarify the LAC was rejected by the Chinese. So this is basically one clear intention by the Chinese to keep India in a perpetual state of uncertainty. Clear? Because just as much as the US also acknowledges that the only opponent who can actually challenge China even remotely in the Asian region is nothing but the Indian tiger. So the Chinese dragon knows this very well. So it is important for the Chinese dragon that India is not allowed to march ahead economically or militarily. And that is why China is very close to Pakistan. Because for China, a stable Pakistan is very, very important, because a stable Pakistan means trouble for India. Clear, people? Moving on. India's claim line is the line seen in the official boundary marked on the maps as released by the Survey of India, including both Aksai Chin and Gilgit-Baltistan. In China's case, it corresponds mostly to its claim line, but in the eastern sector, it claims entire Arunachal Pradesh as South Tibet. Independent India was transferred through the treaties from the British, and while the Shimla Agreement on the McMahon Line was signed by British India, Aksai Chin in Ladakh province of the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir was not part of British India, although it was a part of the British Empire. Thus, the eastern boundary was well defined in 1914, but in the western Ladakh, it was not. The LAC is only a concept. It is not agreed upon by the two countries, neither delineated on a map or demarcated on the ground. That is how it is different from LOC. Clear, people? So LOC was agreed by India and Pakistan after which war? That is a homework for you. Find it out. Or if you know the answer, please put it up in the comment section. Now, China, what we have to understand here, it is a Leninist state, and that itself is a weapon. Now, when you talk about a Leninist state, what we are trying to understand here is that the leaders need not actually worry about their popularity there. They can take those decisions which are not popular. They can take extremely one-sided or totalitarian decisions where even if the people wanted to protest, it will not be entertained by the state. And with such a scenario, it is very easy for them to switch sides as easy as possible, or to take, or even conduct an aggression against another state. It protects the top leaders from media scrutiny or backlash. Now, China was actually affected by zero COVID policy, as well as the drawbacks or the fallout that took place in the real estate sector. And in spite of all this year they have turned it around, and they have even promised now very recently that they are planning to go ahead with the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor $60 billion project. Normalcy in relationship between India and China can return only after disengagement along LAC, which China has been dragging since the last 3 years. Dapsang and Damchok remain unresolved along the LAC region. And you can see this is the Dapsang Plains right here. Clear, people? Now, since April 2020, what are the major areas of flashpoint? Pangongtso Lake, Pangongtso, Galvan Valley, Dapsang Plains, and the hot springs. What Chinese claim as their line? What is clear? International boundary recognized by India, as you can clearly see the map here. From this, we can see what is the reason for so much of skirmishes to take place in the Union Territory of Ladakh. Clear, people? Moving on. Coming to another in shorts news, the Commission for Scientific and Technical Terminology, under the aegis of Union Ministry of Education, is working on technical and scientific terminology in 10 Indian languages that are underrepresented in the learning landscape. The CSTT will bring out what it calls fundamental dictionaries with 5,000 words per language in 3 or 4 months. These will be in digital searchable format and free of cost. About 1 million, more than 10 million copies will be printed in each language. Bodo, Santali, Dogri, Kashmiri, Konkani, Nepali, Manipuri, Sindhi, Maithili, and Sanskrit are part of a list of 22 official languages of India according to the 8th schedule of the Constitution. LIGO. LIGO is the world's largest gravitational wave observatory, a scientific collaboration and marvel of engineering that consists of 2 facilities in the United States, one in the Pacific Northwest at Hanford, Washington, and another near the Gulf of Mexico in Livingston, Louisiana. LIGO uses lasers to detect ripples in space-time through a method called interferometry. As gravitational waves pass by, they cause space itself to stretch and squeeze, which scientists can measure through changes in the beams of LIGO lasers. Mind you, gravitational waves cannot cause cancer. Clear, people? More than an observatory, LIGO is an experiment of preeminent scale and complexity. The data LIGO collects have far-reaching implications in many areas of physics. LIGO has provided new clues about merging black holes, the existence of neutron stars, and the origin of the universe. It has opened an entirely new way of observing the universe. Astronomers have been studying light from the universe for thousands of years, but now we can also hear the universe through gravitational waves. The United States National Science Foundation is partnering with top US universities and India's Raja Ramanna Center for Advanced Technology, or RRCAT, which is a unit of Department of Atomic Energy, Government of India, to launch LIGO India, a groundbreaking collaboration fueled by a $320 million investment from India that will accelerate discovery and innovation in India and around the world. In shorts, number of candidates with criminal cases up from last polls in Karnataka. It has gone up from 83 to 896 among BJP candidates, 59 to 120 among Congress candidates, 41 to 70 among Janata Dal candidates between 2018 and 2023, according to the Association for Democratic Reforms report. CCTV and Crime. A CAG audit of 2018-19 stated that only 55 to 68% cameras were working in Delhi. The right to protest here is tampered with because CCTVs are being used increasingly to find those people who are having an opinion also against the government. Clear. Now, having opinion against the government itself is not a bad thing. The bad thing it becomes when you use that opinion to unleash violence against the state. Violence against the state cannot be entertained at any cost. Clear. No SOP is there with regard to the usage of CCTV footage or FRS. FRS is facial recognition software. There are no oversight committees in India, unlike in New York and London. So, if at all any suggestions or anything is asked, you can always use examples or the best practices that are there in other countries. This points like this is what will become part of your way forward in your GS paper 3. As it is about CCTV and crime, we are seriously looking at what? We are seriously looking at internal security here. Internal security. Clear, people? The Pune police have detected 122 cases and arrested 336 criminals in 2021 thanks to a network of 1,234 CCTV cameras. The cases include chain snatching, vehicle thefts, house break-ins, and vehicle vandalism. In shorts, the World Press Freedom Index released by Reporters Without Borders has ranked India at 161 out of 180. Pakistan has been ranked better at 150. RSF is an international NGO whose self-proclaimed aim is to defend and promote media freedom. Headquartered in Paris, it has consultative status with United Nations. Yes, no surprises here, considering the fact that Pakistan offers more press freedom to its journalists compared to India. But then please, can somebody explain why is it that Pakistan is in a total state of anarchy and chaos? Why is it that no Pakistani government has ever completed even 5 years of government rule since its independence? Why is it that Pakistan has always gone into a military coup where reporters were silenced? Any opinion which criticizes the state has been more often than not painted as blasphemy, and such reporters have been punished with nothing less than the capital punishment. Clear, because Islam is a state religion there. So any criticism of the government, it is very easy to arm twist it and make it as a criticism of Islam, and then silence all the critics in the name of blasphemy, and then actually put them in jail or give them capital punishment. Clear, people. So the point here is, what we need to understand here is, to what extent are these reports authentic, and to what extent are these reports even neutral? Clear, people. Let's move on. Washington Declaration. The successful launch of North Korea's Hwasong-8 solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile, a vital component for nuclear weapons delivery, seems to trigger the U.S. visit of the South Korean president. According to the Washington Declaration, an American nuclear ballistic submarine would be deployed in the Korean peninsula. A nuclear consultative group would be formed to formulate principles of joint response tactics. South Korea would receive intel from the US regarding nuclear advancements, and the US will strengthen South Korea's nuclear deterrence capabilities through joint military training programs and an annual intergovernmental simulation. The declaration reaffirmed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, implying that South Korea would not venture into the creation of its own independent nuclear capabilities and would instead focus on deterrence measures through an alliance-based approach, where the alliance-based approach will be provided by none other than US. It also mandates a US president as the only sole authority to use the nuclear arsenal of the US in the event of a nuclear confrontation. While the existence of the agreement is based on the security needs of South Korea, the policy reflects big power politics where interest of the larger power US takes precedence. South Korea's nuclear development program, supported by former President Park Chung-hee, was hindered due to US pressure. In the 90s, the US withdrew 100 nuclear weapons from South Korea as part of their Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. The US was hoping to make North Korea unarm itself. Washington made an erroneous assumption that it could deter the weapons production of North Korea by extracting South Korea's nuclear capacity. So if you can clearly see, this is almost looks like Gandhian ideology. Correct? Gandhian ideology, whereby which what are you doing? You are doing what is the most morally right thing to do so that a nuclear escalation can be brought down. But we can clearly see here that even after US withdrew its nuclear weapons from South Korea, North Korea did not budge. North Korea, in fact, went ahead with their nuclear enhancing capabilities or nuclear arms enhancing capabilities. Clear. You can always cite these as exceptions or the reason why Gandhian ideology may be practical on a personal front, but it is not actually practical when it comes to international politics. Clear, people? So this point you can actually use in your ethics paper. Moving on. Secondly, the Nuclear Posture Review 2022 reflects a shift in the US narrative where it is now concerned about the progressing nuclear capacities of North Korea. The report states that North Korea creates deterrence dilemmas for the United States and its allies and partners, and that a crisis or conflict on the Korean peninsula could involve a number of nuclear armed actors, raising the risk of broader conflict. And finally, the US wants to control global nuclear arms production. It has been reluctant to allow South Korea to develop their own nuclear arsenal, as it would hinder the prolonged efforts of controlling nuclear production in the world. The assurance that the US and its nuclear weapons would protect its allies by being responsible for maintaining stability in the region aligns with the larger goal of non-proliferation. Washington plays a major influence in South Korea's foreign policy objectives, and Seoul would rather not disappoint the US as they are a vital supporter of their cause. But increasingly, public opinion in South Korea, if you see, public opinion in South Korea is actually in favor of what? An independent nuclear policy. Independent nuclear policy. Obviously, independent of what? Independent of the US. But again, USA does not want that to happen. That is why USA is now providing all the necessary support for South Korea through the Washington Declaration. In short, Tamil Nadu Assembly amended the Factory Act of 1948 to extend the number of working hours in a day from 8 hours to 12 hours. However, this has been withdrawn now. That is the latest update. This has been withdrawn. This resolution, the government has taken a complete U-turn on it. A similar piece of legislation was passed in the Karnataka Assembly a few months ago. The 8-hour working day was adopted by the International Labour Organization in the year 1990. Trouble in Manipur. So, hearing a petition by 8 people representing the Meitei Tribe Union, the Manipur High Court on April 19 directed the state government to submit within 4 weeks a 10-year-old recommendation to the Union Tribal Affairs Minister for the inclusion of the Meitei community in the ST list, Scheduled Tribes list. The code referred to the ministry's letter in May 2013 to the Manipur government seeking specific recommendation along with the latest socioeconomic survey and ethnographic report. The letter followed a representation submitted by the Scheduled Tribe Demand Committee of Manipur, which began demanding ST status for the Métis in 2012. The petitioners told the High Court that the Métis were recognized as a tribe before the merger of the state with the Union of India in 1949. They argued that ST status is needed to preserve the community and save the ancestral land, tradition, culture, and language of the Métis. The STTCM also said Métis needed constitutional safeguards against outsiders, stating that the community has been kept away from the hills while the tribal people can buy land in the shrinking Imphal Valley. The valley, which comprises about 10% of Manipur's landmass, is dominated by non-tribal Métis who account for more than 64% of the population of the state and yields 40 of the state's 60 MLAs. The hills comprising 90% of the geographical area are inhabited by more than 35% recognized tribe, but send only 20 MLAs to the assembly. While a majority of the Métis are Hindus, followed by Muslims, the 33 recognized tribes broadly classified into any Naga tribe and any Kuki tribe are largely Christians. The tribal groups say that Métis have a demographic and political advantage besides being more advanced than them academically and in other aspects. So that is the irony here. See, basically when we provide ST status to any community, one fundamental condition there is what the community should be in a minority, correct? But that is not the case with the Métis. They are actually in the majority. And Métis, again, it is not like how some media channels are portraying it that it is a Hindu Muslim thing. It's not actually that because it consists of both Hindus and Muslims. Métis community, as such, if you see, comprises of both Hindus and Muslims. And now what has happened is it is a direct confrontation between the majority Métis and the minority Kukis, who unfortunately are actually from what the Christian community. So there is, if you ask me, is there a religious angle to it? Yes, to a certain extent there is. Métis claim that they want the ST status to preserve their culture. Kukis see this as what a majoritarianism happening because the Métis are having the numbers. They are being attacked or they are being subdued here. Clear? Then they feel, that is the Kukis feel, the ST status to the Métis would lead to loss of job opportunities and allow them to acquire land in the hills and push the tribals out. Groups such as the All Tribal Students Union of Manipur point out the language of the Métis people is included in the 8th schedule of the constitution, and many of them have access to benefits associated with SC, OBC, or EWS status. Pro-government groups in Manipur claim some tribal groups with the vested interest are trying to scuttle Chief Minister Nongtombam Biren Singh's crusade against drugs. The anti-drug drive began with destroying poppy fields and the theory that illegal settlers from Myanmar ethnically related to the Kuki Zomi people of Manipur are behind clearing forests and government lands to grow opium and cannabis, created fears of lost opportunities and loss of land. Few Kuki villages were affected as a result of the eviction drive. So this is the thing, the timing was perfect. That is, on one side, you already have an issues between what the Métis and the Kukis. All right. Now this actually coincided with what the anti-drug drive. But in the anti-drug drive, who were vastly affected? The Kukis again. Now, along with it, you had a High Court verdict. What happened? It seemed that as if the government machinery itself was what? In favor only of the Métis. And this led to intense clash between the two communities. Clear, people? So it was not easy. It's just that everything just timed perfectly for situations to boil up in Manipur. Clear? Now, as we speak, what is happening there? The Indian Air Force is conducting sorties there. Fresh batch of reinforcements in the form of Assam Rifles, the Central Reserve Police Force, everything has been sent over to Manipur to restore peace. But then villages have been burning since days. Many people have been killed. Targeted killings have also taken place. And all this, let me tell you, these are all unconfirmed reports because ground level, the reality, very few people know it because, again, nobody is there at the ground level to report it directly. But then, yes, this is true. Villages are burning. That is at least confirmed. To what extent the death toll is, that will only be evident once the fumes settle. In shorts, 14 apps have been banned in JNK. Most of these apps use encrypted messaging, and these apps have been banned because it has been found that terrorists were using these apps. Apprehended terrorists, it was found that they were using these apps, and some of them are Trima, Zangi, Cripwiser, Wikomi, Mediafire, Briar, Nantbox, BChat, etc. Groupings. Now, this will be your homework. Okay, you will have to do this. Which are the groupings that you'll have to do? G20, IPSA, Quad, SCO, BRICS. Your job will be find out the countries, look at their physical maps, mark major physical landforms, also mark water bodies. They should comprise of oceans, seas, and rivers. All right, people, moving on. Higher pay of pension and the Supreme Court. So let us see. The Union Labour Ministry has issued two notifications on Wednesday on the implementation of the Supreme Court verdict on higher Provident Fund pension. While one notification empowers the Employees Provident Fund Organization to draw 1.16% additional contribution from within the overall 12% of the contribution of the employees into the PF. Second notification notifies the relevant provisions in the Code on Social Security to legalize this step. The provision will be implemented in retrospective and employers will contribute 8.33% on entire wages and 1.16% on wages from September 1, 2014. Now, let us see the next homework for you. The next homework again is map work with regard to locate the places mentioned here. Lake Kivu, Benolin, Khartoum, Jeddah, Meghamalai, Solgaon, Bakhmut, Pavitra Wildlife Sanctuary, Simlipal Tiger Reserve. All right. Find out their country name or the state name or the district name. Find it out. Find out the location. Clear, people? Vostro account. Vostro means yours in Latin. Indian banks holding Russian account in rupees. That is what it means in simple terms. Indian banks holding Russian account in rupees. Now, why will Indian bank hold a Russian account and that too where the denomination is in rupees? The reason is to bypass the SWIFT ban and sanctions placed on Russia. Now, this was considered as an important move for de-dollarizing the economy because now the dependence on dollar will be reduced and all the transaction, both import and export, will be settled only in rupee. Now, you must understand one thing. We import more from Russia than what we export. Why? Crude oil, the major ingredient. We import it from where? We import it from Russia. Now, initially it was beneficial for Indian importers because why? We were importing the cheap crude oil and coal. However, the issue is what? We are having import is more than export. Correct. Therefore, what does it mean? We have a trade deficit. Correct. Now, the trade deficit is up to what value? The value right now, the trade deficit has reached to what extent? Let us see. With a high trade gap in favor of Russia, Moscow believes it will end up with an annual rupee surplus of $40 billion. Now, the Vostro account is kept with Indian Bank, correct? And that too in rupees. Whose account it is? Russia's account. Now, Russia, because it is exporting crude oil, which is such an expensive product, you are exporting it to India. You and Indians will have to pay it in money, in rupees again, for whatever imports they are doing of crude oil. Now, basically, what has happened because of this is Russia has accumulated $40 billion worth rupee. That means in rupee terms, let us see how much that is. That is actually 3,200 billion rupees. So you can clearly see that is a very huge amount. What will Russia do with this? Because rupee is not such a freely convertible currency either internationally. So it is not so easy that you can convert this. Moreover, Russia's dependency on Indian exports is bare minimal compared to India's dependency on Russia in terms of the crude oil. So there is not much use that Russia gains out of this equation. India is gaining, yes, because India is getting crude oil at a cheaper rate. India is able to bypass the sanctions placed on Russia. But the fact of the matter here is, what will Russia do with all that money? What will Russia do with 3,200 billion rupees? Not much to do. And that is the reason why the low convertibility of rupee and very low presence of India in world trade has stalled the talks. Now, an increasing amount of trade is being settled in other currencies like UAE, dirham. Clear, people? Russia, Europe, oil. Okay, this is source is not the print. This is the Hindu actually. So some of you should have seen this. So basically, I'll tell you what this is in a nutshell. Okay. UAE, Turkey, Singapore, India, China. These five countries are basically importing crude oil from Russia. And then whatever refined products are obtained, like petrol, diesel, etc., that is given to whom? US, UK, Japan, EU, Canada, Australia. The countries which had said that they will not buy anything from Russia henceforth, or where they have put a cap on the amount of oil that can be imported from Russia. Clear, people? So, who is making a lot of money here? Basically, China, India, Singapore, Turkey, and UAE are making a lot of money. The reason being that Russia is giving oil to these five countries at subsidized rate. Clear, people? Let us see. 1 year following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, countries implementing price cap restrictions. Price cap restrictions means basically, say for example, European Union has said basically put a upper limit saying that beyond this money you cannot import. Up to this value only you can import oil from Russia. Countries implementing price cap restrictions have increased their imports of refined oil products from China, India, Turkey, UAE, and Singapore. These five nations, known as the laundromat countries. Why are they called laundromat countries? Because literally what they are doing is they are literally doing laundering only. Correct? They are taking the crude oil. Okay. They are taking the crude oil and then whatever fractions are obtained from it, that they are sending it to European Union. Whereas the same thing European Union could have done what could have easily done if they were taking it directly from Russia. The cost at least would have come down. So European Union by doing this, the cost has actually gone up. So the laundromat countries have augmented their purchases of Russian oil, processed it, and exported the products to countries enforcing sanctions on Russian oil. The laundromat countries imported more Russian crude oil compared to the year before the war. Import of crude oil from Russia into China increased from 39.8 million tons in the 1 year before the invasion to 57.7 million tons in the 1 year post the invasion. Similar analysis for India shows that the import figure surged from 3.85 million tons before the invasion to 55.9 million tons post the invasion. The growth in Russian crude oil import volumes for these five nations saw a 140% rise, or an increase of 48.2 billion euros in value terms compared to the year before the invasion. Due to the lack of sanctions on Russian crude oil, the laundromat countries are increasing their imports of Russian crude oil, which is available to them at a reduced price. These countries are refining the crude oil brought from Russia and exporting it to price cap coalition countries. And that is why India has put up windfall tax on Indian oil marketing companies. What do you mean by windfall tax? Put it up in the comment section. Between the start of the crude oil import ban and price cap policy on December 5, 2022 and February 24, 2023, a year after the Russian invasion, price cap coalition countries imported 12.9 million tons or 9.5 billion euro worth of oil products from the laundromat countries. Monthly oil products exported to price cap coalition countries from laundromat countries reached a peak in December to January 2023, after which it fell in February, heading towards levels of export before the invasion. According to the report, India was the largest exporter of oil products to price cap coalition countries since the implementation of the crude oil price cap up to 1 year anniversary, followed by China. In the 1 year since the Russian invasion, the EU was the largest region importing from these laundromat countries, buying 20.1 million tons of oil products. Australia, the largest country to import oil products from these countries, purchased 9.1 million tons, followed by US that imported 8.5 million tons. Now let us understand about cattle smuggling, which has been there in the news since at least the last 3 or 4 years. Now let us see the reason for this. Okay. So if you actually see, the cattle is procured from Punjab, Rajasthan, and Haryana and are sent down through NH27 to West Bengal. The cattle containers reach livestock markets in Kishanganj, Bihar, through Gopalganj, Muzaffarpur, Supol, and Araria. From Kishanganj, the containers head for various smuggling corridors in Malda, Murshidabad, and Nadia. All right. And which are the hot zones? National Highway 27, Rajasthan, Haryana, Delhi, UP, or through MP, you reach Bihar, Kishanganj, Murshidabad, Malda, Nadia, exactly near the Bangladesh border. Clear, people? So let us see that now. Before 1947, basically you had what trade used to exist. The normal cattle trade used to exist. Post 1947, it is smuggling because of the huge demand for Indian cattle meat in Bangladesh. Porous border makes this lucrative. 579 km of border is not fenced between India and Bangladesh because of marshes and rivers. Remote villages like Imam Bazar, Mahaldar, Para, situated at the confluence of Ganga, Patma, and Bhagirathi, mark these rivers on the map, and isolated from the nearest towns by 100 km, is a hotspot for cattle smuggling. Nexus between smugglers, BSF, and customs officials have made things even more worse. Seized cattle is underreported and is auctioned off at a lower price to the cartels, who in turn smuggle them across the border. That is the idea. So what is the thing? BSF will catch these smugglers, correct? then whatever cattle is seized, that is put for auction. And who comes and buys this? The cartel itself comes and buys this. Cartel that is approved by the BSF. Clear? Cartel will come and buy this, and whatever, and they are buying it at what? They are buying it at low price. And again, what will the cartel do with it? They will smuggle it out. And per head, what is the profit earned? A cut is given even to whom? BSF. That is the whole case that is going on right now. Clear? Now, what do we see here? A clear nexus between the smugglers, BSF, and customs officials. Correct? Let us see another similar nexus that took place years ago, which led to the Mumbai blasts, gangsters, customs, police nexus. And what was the observation of the Supreme Court? It is shattering to notice that all grades of customs officers, including the commissioners of customs, played an active role as members of conspiracy and implemented the plan. If the Bombay police officials had been able to curtail the conveyance of the contraband in January and February 1993, the occurrence of 12th March 1993 could have been avoided. The role of the Coast Guards is as important as any military troops. Only well strategized Coast Guards and high moral customs officers can prevent any opportunity for the terrorists to attack on our country through our maritime boundary. And this was such an important statement considering the fact that years later we had another major event taking place, 26/11 attack. So we didn't learn from our own past. Getting the picture? And the clear nexus that is occurring between smugglers, BSF, and customs officials along the India Bangladesh border is nothing but a disaster waiting to happen. If this goes unchecked, then pretty soon we can expect a major terror related or a gangster related or any other internal security related issues brewing up in the West Bengal region, because that entire region, the border area that is there between West Bengal and Bangladesh, this entire border region, the issue is what? It is too remote. This region is too remote. So when a region is too remote, then what is the issue there? If the region is remote, automatically unemployment and poverty will be very high. When these two things are very high, automatically you will have what? You will have people ready to do anything for money. Clear? Total number of cattle seized by the BSF in each year: 1,68,000 in 2016, 1,19,000 in 2017, 63,000 in 2018, 77,000 in 19, 46,000 in 2020. So clearly what we are seeing, cattle seized is reducing. So either the smuggling is declining or things are being underreported. We don't know what is the exact details. Clear, people? Following steps are being taken by the border security force to prevent cattle smuggling along Indo-Bangladesh border. Effective domination of the borders by carrying out round-the-clock patrolling, laying nakas, establishing observation posts all along the international border, and strengthening of existing defenses of the border outposts. Vulnerability mapping of BOPs, border outposts, to assess the sensitivity of the area of responsibility for cross-border crimes is being reviewed regularly, and accordingly, sensitive BOPs are being strengthened by deploying additional manpower, special surveillance equipment, and other force multipliers. Deployment of technological solutions. Erection of border fencing on the international border. Installation of border floodlight along border security fence to lit up the area. Use of watercrafts or boats and floating BOPs for domination of riverine area of IB. Simultaneous coordinated patrolling is being conducted with Border Guard Bangladesh on Indo-Bangladesh border. Conduct of special operations along the border and nearby areas. Upgradation of intelligence network and coordination with other security agencies. Drug-resistant TB. Tuberculosis is a treatable disease, but drug resistance is now a major public health concern, exacerbated by the emergence of multi and extensively drug-resistant TB. India has the highest burden of multi-drug resistant TB bacteria, with the World Health Organization putting the figure at 0.39 million cases worldwide and highlighting the need to stop its spread. If long treatment, higher drug toxicity, and costly drug treatment makes the MDR and extensively drug-resistant TB challenging to treat, a group of scientists led by CSIR Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology Director Vinay Kumar Nandikuri has, in a new study, established that the mutations in DNA repair genes could be used for the early diagnosis of MDR or XDR-TB. The study identified a compromised DNA repair as one of the novel mechanisms for the evolution of drug resistance in Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which causes tuberculosis in humans. MDR-TB bacteria are resistant to first-line anti-TB drugs and extensively drug resistant when it becomes resistant to first-line TB drugs. Since the evolution of drug resistance in India has not been studied, scientists started analyzing the genome sequence of bacteria isolated from TB patients from other parts of the world to understand the unknown mechanisms and bridge the gap between early diagnosis and treatment of MDR-TB. With the help of whole genome sequencing of bacteria, it was successfully shown that perturbed DNA repair aids in the acquisition of drug resistance in MTB. So once you have understood that a disturbed DNA can lead to multi-drug resistant TB or extremely drug resistant TB, then you can what? You can rectify the DNA. Clear? You can rectify the DNA and thus solve both these conditions. That is the understanding here. Moving on. Respiratory syncytial virus, RSV, is a common respiratory virus that usually causes mild cold-like symptoms. Most people recover in a week or two, but RSV can be serious, especially for infants and older adults. RSV is the most common cause of bronchiolitis and pneumonia in children younger than 1 year of age in the US. People infected with RSV usually show symptoms within 4 to 6 days after getting infected. Symptoms of RSV infection usually include runny nose, decrease in appetite, coughing, sneezing, fever, wheezing. These symptoms usually appear in stages and not all at once. In very young infants with RSV, the only symptoms may be irritability, decreased activity, and breathing difficulties. On May 3, the Food and Drug Administration approved the first vaccine, RSV, for respiratory syncytial virus to lower respiratory tract disease in people older than 60 years. This is the first RSV vaccine to be approved anywhere in the world. Artificial intelligence and internal security. The Department of Telecommunication deployed the Artificial Intelligence and Facial Recognition Powered Solution, ASTR, to identify large number of similar images with different addresses. ASTR is considered. So, a similar image with different addresses means person will be having the same photo, okay? Two different Aadhaar card, same photo. Address is different. Address is different, but the photos are the same. So this way they can eliminate the same Aadhaar card. I mean, same person, different Aadhaar cards. Clear. The ASTR is considered a game changer in the industry and the next generation platform to detect and weed out SIM cards activated with fake proof of identities. While Vodafone Idea had the maximum number of SIM cards activated with fake credentials, state-owned BSNL had the lowest. There were two aspects in the activation of SIM cards with fake identities. First is the subscriber or applicant giving a fake proof of identity, and the second is the seller facilitating the activation with the proof of identity of others. Of late, retailers were taking live photographs of applicants and uploading them on the system before activating SIM cards of certain service providers. A leading service provider had access to the Aadhaar data and biometrics good enough to authenticate the identity and address of the applicants. However, long before this practice came into force, several SIM cards were activated through conventional methods. EU's Artificial Intelligence Act. The draft of the AI Act broadly defines AI as a software that is developed with one or more of the techniques that can, for a given set of human-defined objectives, generate outputs such as content, predictions, recommendations, or decisions influencing the environments they interact with. It identifies AI tools based on machine learning and deep learning, knowledge, as well as logic-based and statistical approaches. The Act's central approach is the classification of AI tech based on the level of risk they pose to the health and safety or fundamental rights of a person. There are four risk categories in the Act: unacceptable, high, limited, and minimal. The Act prohibits using technologies in the unacceptable risk category with little exception. These includes the use of real-time facial and biometric identification systems in public spaces, systems of social scoring of citizens by governments leading to unjustified and disproportionate detrimental treatment, subliminal techniques to distort a person's behavior, and technologies which can exploit vulnerabilities of the young or elderly or persons with disabilities. The Act lays substantial focus on AI in the high-risk category, prescribing a number of pre- and post-market requirements for developers and users of such systems. Some systems falling under this category include biometric identification and categorization of natural persons, AI used in healthcare, education, employment, that is recruitment, law enforcement, justice delivery system, and tools that provide access to essential private and public services, including the access to financial services such as loan approval systems. The Act envisages establishing an EU-wide database of high-risk AI systems and setting parameters so that future technologies or those under development can be included if they meet the high-risk criteria. Before high-risk AI systems can make it to the market, they will be subject to strict reviews known in the Act as conformity assessments, algorithmic impact assessments to analyze data sets fed to AI tools, biases, how users interact with the system, and the overall design and monitoring of the system output. It also requires such systems to be transparent, explainable, allow human oversight, and give clear and adequate information to the user. Moreover, since AI algorithms are specifically designed to evolve over time, high-risk system must also comply with mandatory post-market monitoring obligations such as logging performance data and maintaining continuous compliance with special attention paid to how these programs change through their lifetime. What is the nutshell, whatever we have discussed? That is, first of all, it defines what is AI. Second of all, it categorizes various types of AI. So the high risk, what does it talk about? Basically, not to use the biometric data or data of any form that will compromise the vulnerability of the young and the old, or it will lead to prejudicial behavior among either the law enforcement or the judicial agencies. This is what it is in a nutshell. Now, why do we need it actually? Why do we need AI based act? Because AI is actually, the technology itself is actually known as what? Black box. Why it is called a black box? Because the creator of algorithm, the algorithm for AI, even the creator also won't know what is exactly happening inside. What is the AI bound to do? How is it going to process the input given to it? Even the creator doesn't know. That is the beauty as well as the danger behind AI. Clear, people? AI systems in the limited and minimal risk categories, such as spam filters or video games, are allowed to be used with a few requirements like transparency obligations. Lawmakers now target the use of copyrighted material by companies deploying generative AI tools such as OpenAI's ChatGPT or image generator Midjourney, as these tools train themselves from large sets of text and visual data on the internet. So the ChatGPT everybody is using these days basically to generate content, etc. But the problem with ChatGPT is that ChatGPT does not make any distinction between copyrighted content and non-copyrighted content. Whatever information has been fed to it or whatever information it has learned by itself, it just produces it out there. So it is a clear violation of what copyright protection or clear violation of patents. They'll have to disclose any copyrighted material used to develop their systems. While the current draft does not clarify what obligations GPA's manufacturers would be subject to, lawmakers are debating whether all forms of GPA should be designated as high risk. The draft would be amended multiple times before it actually comes into force. So just it is to discuss what it is about. Clear, people? The US currently does not have comprehensive AI regulation and has taken a fairly hands-off approach. Why? Now, if you're going to put a, let us say, a copyright-based restriction on chat gpt, let us say, then what will happen? Automatically chat gpt will not be able to produce a lot of the results, and if you need to get the results, then chat gpt will charging you, which they've already started doing, and they'll charge you even if it is patented. So the entire thing called the information is available for free, or artificial intelligence will be able to generate the information for free, that itself is destroyed then. Clear. The Biden administration released a blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights, which was developed by the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. The AI BOR outlines the harms of AI to economic and civil rights and lays down 5 principles for mitigating these harms. The blueprint, instead of a horizontal approach like the EU, endorses a sector-specific approach to AI governance, with policy interventions for individual sectors such as health, labor, and education, leaving it to the sectoral federal agencies to come out with their plans. The AIBOR has been described by the administration as a guidance or a handbook rather than a binding legislation. On the other end of the spectrum, China over the last year came out with some of the world's first nationally binding regulations targeting specific type of algorithms and AI. It enacted a law to regulate recommendation algorithms with a focus on how they disseminate information. China's Cyberspace Administration, which drafted the rules, told companies to promote positive energy, to not endanger national security or social public interest, and to give an explanation when they harm the legitimate interests of the users. Another piece of legislation targets deep synthesis technology used to generate deep fakes. In order to have transparency and understand how algorithms function, China's AI Regulation Authority has also created a registry or database of algorithms where developers have to register their algorithms, information about the datasets used by them, and potential security risks. So here we can see China again is leading the way in terms of what clearly defining the do's and don'ts for artificial intelligence based algorithms. Clear people. Now, deepfake simply means you would have seen videos, right, where a person's face will be. Now, earlier you had what is known as morphing, where it was very easy. That is, a person's face will be cut off from any one of the public images available and it will be superimposed on another individual's face. That was morphing. But anybody who looked at it could easily make out that it is morphed image. It is not looking proper. Naked eye was enough. But these days, deep fakes are so realistic where you will actually doubt whether it is the original person or whether it is a morphed image, whether it is a real image. You will always be confused. That is what a deep fake is. Clear people. And deep fakes, it is not just for images. They can generate fake images even in videos. So you would have seen basically the pornographic videos, etc., that are being circulated, where they say that this is the crediting it to an actress, etc. You would have seen such videos also, where most of these videos are fake, and what is it? It is only trying to malign the image of the actresses there, and they are using basically what technology here? The deep fake technology. Clear people. Smart metering. More than 5.5 million smart meters have been installed in India and over 100 million have been sanctioned. Target is to replace 250 million conventional electric meters with prepaid smart meters by 2025-26. India is supporting this initiative through a results-linked grant cum financing to help power distribution companies become financially sound and efficient to deliver better services to the consumers. High user satisfaction in Assam and high uptake of mobile app in Bihar indicate learning opportunities on how to scale smart meter usage for discoms in other states. Majority of smart meters in India are being deployed by the advanced metering infrastructure service providers responsible for installation and operation of the AMI system for the project lifetime. Project Sanjay. Army formation at all levels, from the commander on the ground to the corps level, will soon have a real-time common operating picture with information and data from various sensors and inputs fused into one comprehensive image for quick decision making, according to defense sources who said that this is a result of one of the several automation projects in the process of being rolled out. A new battlefield surveillance system under Project Sanjay is in the process of being deployed after extensive validation carried out in the plains, deserts, and mountains. Under BSS, the aim is to have surveillance centers for all field formations by December 2025. It will integrate thousands of sensors, which will enable provision of an integrated surveillance picture to commanders and staff at all levels, besides completing the sensor shooter grid by integrating with the Artillery Combat Command and Control System. The system also integrates data on the movements of India's adversaries received from various sources across borders, including sensors, satellites, UAVs, or unmanned aerial vehicles and patrols. Connect this with what? Connect this with Navig. Navigation using Indian constellation. This is among a series of automation projects being rolled out which are expected to cumulatively improve operational efficiency, enhance battlefield awareness for commanders on the ground, and also provide functional efficiency for human resource management, logistics, inventory management, medical services, and other administrative functions. Bharat Electronics Limited Ghaziabad is a project system integrator, and after hundreds of trials across terrains, it has shown a rate of success of more than 95%, meeting the Army's aspirations and requirements. As part of the trials, a few surveillance centers were set up under two corps of the Army, and with the bulk production clearance now granted, the full project will be implemented by the end of 2025. The original cost was estimated around 2,700 crore rupees, but has now been revised to 2,400 crore and is set to go down further. Very, very important. Normally, the cost will actually increase, but here the cost you can see this getting reduced. To enable these projects, the imminent operationalization of the secure network for Spectrum will provide an abundance of bandwidth to the services. Further, the Army is setting up captive data centers across the country, and these will be fully operational this year. A decision support system called the Situational Awareness Module for the Army has successfully integrated inputs from ACCCS, BSS, ECTREP, and the Management Information System Organization. EU carbon tax. The EU plans to introduce a carbon border adjustment mechanism that will entail a monitoring mechanism for imports from producers deploying non-green technology starting this October, and a tax levy from January 2026. That means those countries which are not following any norms, any green norms, those countries will be affected. That means India will be affected. This is likely to hit Indian metal and engineering products export to EU. Addressing this challenge is one of the top agenda items for the Commerce Department. Service sector uptick. India's services sector recorded its highest uptick in new business and output levels since June 2010, this April, led by a strong upturn in the finance and insurance segment as per the seasonally adjusted S&P Global India Services Purchases Managers Index Business Activity Index, which rebounded from a decline to 57.8 in March to 62 in April. A reading of 50 on the index indicates no change in business activity levels. Greater than 50 means it is expansion. All right, less than 50 means it means contraction. New export orders expanded for the third month in succession and at the fastest pace over this period. However, job creation remained negligible in April, and input cost inflation, which had hit a 2.5 year low in March, surged to a 3 month high, with firms reporting a rise in cost on food, fuel, medicine, transportation, and wages. Consumer services firms recorded the fastest upturn in average expenses as per the survey-based monthly indicator, but all services sectors raised selling prices at the fastest pace in 2023, with most acute price hikes undertaken by transport, information, and communication businesses. Cyclone in Bay of Bengal, Mocha. A low pressure area is usually a precursor to the development of a cyclone. You can pronounce it as Mocha. Okay. When in Cafe Mocha, now some places they call it Mocha also. So it is left to you. The IMD has a 5 step classification for cyclones, where the relatively weakest classified as a cyclonic storm and the strongest a super cyclonic storm. A severe cyclonic storm is just 1 step above a cyclonic storm. This will be the first cyclone to form this year and it will be called Cyclone Mocha. The name was proposed by Yemen after the Red Sea port city following an international convention on naming cyclones. Supreme Court Article 142 and diverse. This Article 142 was mentioned in another case. Perarivalan. What was the verdict about? Please put it up in the comment section. Leaning on the guiding spirit of Article 142, Clause 1 of the Constitution to do complete justice in any cause or matter, a Constitution bench said it could use its extraordinary discretionary power to grant divorce by mutual consent to couples trapped in bitter marriages. So, Article 142 gives sky high powers to Supreme Court. This article actually allows for not just judicial activism, it can lead to judicial overreach as well as judicial adventurism. Clear, people, it depends highly upon the type of the case and the context also. So here basically Article 142 has been used by the Supreme Court to basically put an end to those marriages which are very bitter through mutual consent rather than simply drag it for a long period of time. It also aims to spare couples the agony and misery of waiting 6 to 18 months for a local court to annul it, as stipulated under Section 13B of the Hindu Marriage Act 1955. The bench, headed by Justice Sanjay observed that the law of divorce, built predominantly on assigning fault, fails to serve broken marriages. So, if you actually look into divorce, always it's a blame game. Correct. Either husband has put some blame on the wife, or wife has a blame on the husband, or both of them end up blaming each other. Now, without blame also, it is also possible that simply two people are unable to live with each other. There could be not any major reason as such, but they just don't have a vibe to connect with. So, to rather than continue to living like that, why not end the divorce in a respectful manner so that things don't turn out to be bitter, at least during the divorce or even after that. That is the idea. It pointed out that if a marriage is wrecked beyond hope, public interest lies in recognizing this fact, not upholding a married status regardless. Court said it could use Article 142 to quash pending criminal or legal proceedings, be it over domestic violence or dowry, against the man or woman. Continuing in this trade, the bench said the Supreme Court could grant divorce on the grounds of an irretrievable breakdown of marriage if the separation is inevitable and the damage is irreparable. Under the Hindu Marriage Act, irretrievable breakdown of marriage is not yet a ground for divorce. That means this new ground that Supreme Court has created can actually fasten divorce. at the lower court level itself. Clear. In its judgment, there was a word of caution that the grant of divorce would not be a matter of right, but a discretion which is to be exercised with great care, keeping in mind that complete justice is done to both parties. That is the point here. Now, irretrievable breakdown of marriage. If that is often cited as a reason, means then the divorce cases are bound to increase even further. So that is why Supreme Court has advised, even though it gave a verdict where it used irretrievable breakdown of marriage, it still has to be exercised by the lower courts with extreme caution. Several factors would be considered by the Supreme Court before invoking Article 142 in matrimonial cases, including duration of marriage, period of litigation, the time the couple has stayed apart, the nature of pending cases, and attempts at reconciliation. The court will have to be satisfied that the mutual agreement to divorce was not under coercion. In India, while divorcees have doubled in number over the past 2 decades, the incidence of divorce is still at 1.1%, with those in urban areas making up the largest proportion. Gig worker. Gig worker refers to workers outside of the traditional employer-employee relationship. There are two groups, platform workers and non-platform workers. So the gig workers who use online algorithmic matching platforms or apps to connect with customers, they are called platform workers. Those who work outside of these platforms are non-platform workers, including construction workers, non-technology based temporary workers. Whether gig workers should be categorized as employees or as independent contractors has been a heated debate. In India, employees are entitled to a host of benefits under statutes such as Minimum Wages Act 1948, Employees Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1952, and the Payment of Bonus Act 1965. Similarly, contract laborers are governed under the Contract Labor Act 1970 and are also entitled to benefits such as Provident Fund. However, given the unique nature of gig work, gig workers display characteristics of both employees and independent contractors and thus do not squarely fit into any rigid categorization. This is the major issue. Both features they exhibit. So, where will you place them? As a result, gig workers have limited recognition under current employment laws and thus fall outside the ambit of statutory benefits. The Ministry of Labour and Employment introduced the Code on Social Security 2020, which brings gig workers within the ambit of labour laws for the first time. Under Section 2, Clause 35 of the Code, a gig worker is defined as a person who performs work or participates in a work arrangement and earns from such activities outside of a traditional employer-employee relationship. The code defines platform work as a work arrangement outside of a traditional employer-employee relationship in which organizations or individuals use an online platform to access other organizations or individuals to solve specific problems or to provide specific services in exchange for payment. Although the code recognizes gig workers, it distinguishes between such workers and employees. While employees have benefits such as gratuity, employee compensation, insurance, provident fund, and maternity benefits, the code stipulates that central and state governments must frame suitable social security schemes for gig workers on matters relating to health and maternity benefits, provident fund, and accident benefit, among others. The code also mandates the compulsory registration of all gig workers and platform workers to avail of the benefits under the schemes. Out of the four new labor codes proposed, gig work finds reference only in the code on social security. As a result, gig workers remain excluded from vital benefits and protections offered by other codes such as minimum wage, occupational safety, etc. This is very important in the context of the recent strike conducted by the Blinkit workers, where their weekly revenue or the cut that they used to get for every delivery that was reduced. They also cannot create legally recognized unions. Moreover, they remain excluded from accessing the specialized redressal mechanism under the Industrial Disputes Act 1947, denying them an effective remedy for grievances against their employers. Considering the non-traditional nature of their work, gig workers also do not have the right to collective bargaining, a fundamental principle of modern labor law crucial to safeguard the rights of workers. A 2022 report by Fair Work India, an international research project, highlighted the deplorable working conditions of the employees of digital labor platforms in India and the need for statutory affirmation of the rights of gig workers. Despite receiving the assent of the president, the labor codes are still awaiting implementation 3 years on. Central has said that this is due to the delay in framing of rules by the states. On September 20, 2021, the Indian Federation of App-Based Transport Workers filed a public interest litigation on behalf of gig workers before the Supreme Court. The petition demanded that gig workers or platform workers be declared as unorganized workers so that they can come under the purview of the Unorganized Workers Social Security Act 2008 and be provided with statutory protection in the form of social security benefits. has been contended that the exclusion of gig workers from the category of unorganized workers or wage workers under Section 2M and 2N of UWSS Act is violating their fundamental rights under Article 14 and Article 21 of the Constitution. Further, it has been argued that such denial of social benefits amounts to exploitation through forced labor within the meaning of Article 23. Union Labour Minister Bhupender Yadav said in a written reply to the Rajya Sabha that there is a provision in the Code on Social Security 2020 to set up a social security fund and to formulate schemes for unorganized sector workers, including gig and platform workers. More than 29 lakh registrations have been made in the e-Shram portal so far. Clear. In which more than 7 lakh registrations belong to whom? The gig workers. According to the DG of International Labour Organization, a global coalition for social justice needs to be created. This coalition will create a platform to bring together a broad range of international bodies and stakeholders. It will position social justice as the keystone of the global recovery so that it is prioritized in national, regional, and global policies and actions. In sum, it will ensure that our future is human-centered. That means, giving gig workers their due. Today, affluent countries in Europe, such as Switzerland, Denmark, and the Netherlands, have reduced the hours of work. Clear. Again, this should be seen in the backdrop of Karnataka increasing the work hours to 12, including rest time, for 4 days a week, and 3 days you will have off. Tamil Nadu tried to do the same thing, but then did a complete U-turn. 8-hour work was achieved through International Labour Organization. So connect all the things. Clear. Labor related. In India, mainstream economists give the green signal to any initiative as long as it increases exports, even if it is at the cost of labor rights and human rights. They recommend emulating countries like Bangladesh for garments and Vietnam for electronics. In 2022, according to the Global Right Index launched by the International Trade Union Confederation, Bangladesh ranked among the 10 worst countries where labor rights are not guaranteed. So you might remember there was this sweatshops that run in Bangladesh. Clear. So all the major sports brand or any major apparel that you talk about, they are basically stitched inside Bangladesh. So people there work inside these very cramped, very moist, humid rooms where there is no fire escape, nothing is there. So a building had collapsed many years ago, where it led to the death of many people. All right, who are employed inside such sweatshops. Why are they called sweatshops? Is again because you keep sweating like anything because it's very cramped. There is no air circulation, nothing is there. Clear, people. On a scale of 1 to 5, on degree of respect for workers' rights, ITUC rated Vietnam 4, which indicates systematic violation of labor rights. The comparator countries that neoliberals refer to are known for their poor record of labor rights. So we are actually advocating, or we are actually talking about the exports increasing of Bangladesh in the garment sector, or when we talk about when electronics exports are increasing in our electronic exports are increasing in Vietnam, then one must also understand this is also because labor exploitation in both these countries is at its peak. Clear, people. Moving on. Constitutional punctuality, governor versus state legislature. Let us see that now. Tamil Nadu Legislative Assembly has passed a resolution seeking to provide for a time frame for governors to act on bills passed by the state legislature. That means there is no time frame as to how long a governor can keep a bill pending. There is no time frame at all. Clear. The Supreme Court of India, while disposing of a case filed by the state of Telangana against its governor, Dr. Tamilisai Soundarajan, remarked that governors should not sit over bills indefinitely. It may also be understood that the drafters of the constitution, in their contemporaneous wisdom, expected Raj Bhavans to be nominated with those who would discharge sovereign duties beyond the confines of political partisanship. Article 200 of the Constitution, as it stands today, limits the options before the governor to give assent to the bill sent by the legislature or withhold assent or reserve a bill for the consideration of the president. The nub of the issue is that governors have wrongly understood the function to grant assent to have endowed them with some discretionary responsibility. See, we must understand one thing. Governor, or be it president, has discretion only with regard to a very few matters in which the constitution has made it very clear. What are those discretion? Where is it given? What are those discretionary powers of the governor? Please put it up in the comment section. Other than in those matters, in every other matter, governor or be it the president are supposed to act only according to the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, headed by the Prime Minister if it is the president, or the Chief Minister if it is the governor. The original draft Article 175 moved for discussion in 1949 read as follows: provided that where there is only one house of the legislature and the bill has been passed by that house, the governor may in his discretion return the bill together with a message requesting that the house will reconsider the bill. While moving the amendment to this article on July 30, 1949, B.R. Ambedkar said that there can be no room for a governor acting on discretion and recommended removing the phrase the governor in his discretion. So clearly we know that there is no discretionary power. This position has been fortified by a 7-judge bench of the Supreme Court in Shamsher Singh and A.N.R. versus the state of Punjab, wherein it was held that the discretion of the governor is extremely limited, and even in such rare cases shall act in a manner that is not detrimental to the interest of the state. Furthermore, the Supreme Court has repeatedly held that the governor shall only act on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. Moreover, a simple and plain reading of the article is sufficient to show how the meaning of the phrase withholds assent therefrom has been willfully misinterpreted to mean holding back the bill, an act which is colloquially referred to as pocket veto. Any straightforward reading of withholding assent can only mean to return the bill and not to hold it back. You cannot simply hold it back. If you have some issue, you have to return it back. The problem is accentuated as there is no time limit prescribed to return the bill, and as such, governors have considered themselves to be unaccountable to the principles of time bound governance. In the UK, there has been no royal veto since 1708 when the assent to the Scottish Militia Bill was vetoed by Queen Anne. Whereas in the United States, there is a time limit of 10 days for the president to give assent to a bill or veto the bill. If the president does not sign or vetoes the bill within this time, it automatically becomes an act. If the president vetoes and returns the bill to the Congress or Senate, then both the chambers of the Congress must override the veto for it to become a law. The Supreme Court in Kesham Meghachandra Singh versus the Honorable Speaker of Manipur issued a writ of mandamus to the Speaker of the Meghalaya Legislative Assembly to decide on the disqualification petitions under the 10th schedule of the Constitution within a period of 4 weeks. What is the 10th schedule? What is it otherwise called? Put it up in the comment section. In the case filed by the state of Telangana against the governor, the Supreme Court found it fit to highlight the spirit of Article 200. While disposing of the case on April 24, 2023, the court acknowledged that the words in Article 200 as soon as possible after the presentation of the bill held significant constitutional content and the governor should necessarily bear this in mind. That means there is no power for the governor to act on a bill passed by the Legislative Assembly, to act on it in your own sweet time. You cannot do that. You have to do it within a time-bound process. But the problem here is that in the Constitution, there is nothing that specifies any time. Clear? As such, it will be appropriate for various constitutional authorities such as governors exercising powers under Article 200 and speakers acting as quasi-judicial tribunals under 10th schedule to evolve strict timeframes and avoid unnecessary delays. Psychedelic drugs. Psychedelics, they are a group of drugs that alter perception, mood, and thought processing while a person is still clearly conscious. Usually, the person's insight also remains unimpaired. Psychedelics are non-addictive, non-toxic, and compared to illicit drugs, they are less harmful to the end user. In India, the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act 1985 prohibits the use of psychedelic substances. Ketamine, a dissociative anesthetic with psychedelic properties, is used under strict medical supervision for anesthesia and treatment-resistant depression. The word is derived from Greek words psyche, meaning mind, and delon, meaning to manifest. Humans have used psilocybin and mescaline for ceremonies, healing, and spiritual rituals for the millennia. Between 1947 and 1967, LSD was widely used as a therapeutic catalyst in psychotherapy. Users of psychedelic substances report changes in perception, somatic experience, mood, thought processing, and entheogenic experiences. Perceptual distortions most commonly include the visual domain. So when you take psychedelic drugs, it will create certain misperceptions. An intriguing phenomenon called synesthesia may occur where the sensory modalities cross and the user may hear color or see sounds. Classical psychedelics boost brain serotonin levels. That means it is capable of creating hallucinations. Boost brain serotonin levels. Death due to direct toxicity of LSD psilocybin or mescaline has not been reported despite 50 plus years of recreational use. An overdose requires cardiac monitoring and supportive management in a low stimulus and reassuring environment. Synthetic psychedelics have been associated with acute cardiac, central nervous system, and limb ischemia as well as serotonin syndrome. So, let me tell you one thing here. The article is basically talking that psychedelic drugs, is not so harmful, it is not so bad, all that. But you must look into what it is telling and read between the lines. Psychedelic drugs are supposed to be taken again in a very controlled environment. That means what? It needs to be administered by a proper expert. It is not something that you take by yourself. You need actually a doctor's recommendation to even take a psychedelic drug. Even whatever recreational drug you are calling it, however you would like to name it fancily, it creates certain effects inside the brain. Like as it has been rightly put up, you may hear color or see sounds. Clear people. There have also been reports of death attributed directly to synthetic psychedelic use. The effects of psychedelics depend on the interaction between the drug and the user's mindset, together called a set, and the environmental setting. People with a personal or family history of psychosis are strongly discouraged from experimenting with psychedelics. There is also no evidence that psychedelics cause physiological or psychological dependence, nor has any withdrawal syndromes been identified. So you must understand here one thing, there is no evidence, correct? But that does not mean there is no existence at all of what psychedelic drugs being addictive. Why? Because see, it is basically releasing serotonin. It is basically used as an antidepressant. So it basically releases the happy hormone inside your brain. So that happy hormones release, people can get addicted to that very hormone itself. And for that, they can go ahead and take up what? Repeatedly, these psychedelic drugs. Clear people. Tension headaches are common in the 24 hours after use and are offset by the use of simple analgesics. Brief and self-limiting psychotic episodes can occur when a user is intoxicated with psychedelics, particularly LSD. Brief and self-limiting psychotic episodes. That means you are bound to act a little off the mark once you take it. And they are telling it is brief and self-limiting. The point here is to what extent it is. To what extent you can assure that it will be self-limiting. Again, there is no evidence for that. They are more common among first-time users and among those with a personal or family history of psychiatric illness. Users describe these experiences as a bad trip and they are more likely to occur in unfavorable environments. A single 25 mg dose of psilocybin reduced depression scores over 3 weeks in people with treatment-resistant depression. Adverse events included headache, nausea, and dizziness, which occurred in 77% of the participants. In 2017, the US Food and Drug Administration designated the use of 3,4-methyl methylene dioxymethamphetamine, also known as MDMA, to be the breakthrough therapy in the treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder. Under its expanded access program, the FDA has allowed a small number of people, particularly those seriously ill with post-traumatic stress disorder, and when responded to other treatment, to use MDMA, almost like a last resort. And again, what? Again, it is not self-medication. It is something that has to be recommended. Clear? Psychedelic substances provide an intriguing avenue through which one can probe the broader constructs of creativity, spirituality, and consciousness aside from their therapeutic effects. While not a panacea, psychedelic substances have certainly reinvigorated clinical and research interest and have added to psychiatry's ever expanding therapeutic armamentarium. So the idea here is whatever be it, psychedelic drugs has to be taken only under experts' guidance. You cannot actually pop in a few drugs of psychedelics, just like how you may take a crocin or a paracetamol. Clear people. There are gray areas in laws banning prenatal sex determination. Let us see that. The Delhi High Court has remarked that certain aspects of the preconception prenatal diagnostic techniques need reconsideration for effective implementation of the Act. Justice Swarana Kanta Sharma noted that though the PC and PNDT rules contemplate that the police should not be involved in raid, seizure, etc., as far as possible, the practicality of this aspect needs to be reconsidered since such action has to be as per the CRPC for conducting raids at facilities or clinics. So that is the interesting aspect here. It basically does not allow the cops literally to go and conduct raid. But if you need to conduct raid, then it comes under CRPC, and CRPC means we are talking about cops here. According to the Delhi High Court order, for a common man or a layman, a complaint for commission of any offence can be lodged with the police. Therefore, even in a case of information regarding sex determination test, police is often approached as the first authority. But as per the Act, police is not the authority. The police is not the first authority competent to initiate action under the Act. Another grey area of the Act is that while the powers of investigation, search, seizure, raid, cancellation, or suspension of registration of medical centers and facilities have been given to the appropriate authority, the offences under the Act have been made cognizable without vesting the power of arrest in the appropriate authority. That is the irony here. That is, investigation, search, seizure, raid, cancellation, suspension, or registration of medical centers. All this has been given to whom? The appropriate authority. But then, when you talk about power of arrest, that is not there. Clear. Shilabhattarika and her poetry. Now, this is a topic from art and culture. What I want you to do is go through your art and culture as well as your what is it, ancient medieval history also, to read about the Chalukyas, the Gurjara Pratyaharas. Let us see. Shilabhattarika, the celebrated Sanskrit poetess of ancient India, has been established as what? The daughter of the famed Chalukyan emperor Pulakeshin II of Badami, who was a Chalukyan prince. So Shilabhattarika was a Chalukyan prince, possibly the daughter of Pulakeshin II, who ruled from 610 to 642 CE and had defeated Harshavardhan of Kannauj in a battle near the banks of the Narmada River in 618 CE. The Sanskrit poet critic Raja Shegara, who lived in the 9th and 10th century CE and was the court poet of the Gurjara Pratyaharas, had praised Shilabhattarika for her elegant and beautiful compositions. Noted Marathi poetess Shanta Shelke too has drawn inspiration from Shilabhattarika's verses to compose one of her most iconic songs, To Chan Drama Nabat. It is the same moon in the sky. The decoding of the copper plates also marks a notable shift in the historiography of Badami Chalukyas by placing Shilabhattarika as having lived in the 7th century Christian era, rather than the current theory which had as the wife of the 8th century Rashtrakuta ruler Dhruva. The charter had 5 plates measuring 23.4 centimeter by 9.4 centimeter, held together by a copper ring bearing and a beautiful Varaha, boar seal. The Varaha seal is the trademark of the Badami Chalukyas. The charter contained a Sanskrit text with 65 lines inscribed in the late Brahmi script. A primary reading of the plates revealed that Vijayaditya had donated the village of Sikatteru in the Kogali Vishaya to a Vedic scholar named Vishnu Sharma in the month of Magha, Shaka year 638, corresponding to January-February 717 Christian era. The plates reveal that Vijayaditya had donated the village on request by Mahendra Varma, the son of Shilabhattarika. India and SDG. The SDGs framework sets target for 231 unique indicators across 17 SDG goals related to economic development, social welfare, and environmental sustainability, which is to be met by 2030. The good news is that India is on target to meeting 14 of the 33 SDGs, including indicators for neonatal and under 5 mortality, full vaccination, improved sanitation, and electricity access, all of which have substantially improved in the last 5 years. Unfortunately, the national on target designation does not apply equally across all districts. While neonatal and under 5 mortality are currently both on target for the country, 286 and 208 districts out of 707 districts, respectively, are not. That means there is inequality in the country with respect to the achievement of SDG. Similarly, significant progress on access to improved sanitation excludes 129 districts that are not on course to meet this SDG indicator. Indicators such as eliminating adolescent pregnancy, reducing multidimensional poverty, and women having bank accounts have improved across a vast majority of the districts between the years 2016 and 2021. Of concern for 19 of the 33 SDG indicators, the current pace of improvement is not enough to meet the SDG targets. Despite a national policy push for clean fuel for cooking, more than two-thirds of the districts remain off target. Similarly, some 415 and 278 districts are off target for improved water and hand washing facilities. Of heightened concern are SDG indicators for women's well-being and gender inequality. No district in India has yet succeeded in eliminating the practice of girl-child marriage before the legal age of 18 years. At the current pace, more than three-fourths of districts will not be able to reduce the prevalence of girl-child marriage to the SDG target of 0.5% by 2030, that is 539. Unsurprisingly, other critical and related indicators such as teenage pregnancy and partner violence that may be tracked back to child marriage are issues that India needs to escalate as priorities. Despite the overall expansion of mobile phones access in India, 93% of households, only 56% women report owning a mobile phone, with 567 districts remaining off target. That means gender inequality with regard to access to technology. With regard to access to technology. Clear, people? With that, we come to a conclusion of our 1 week's current affair discussion. Any suggestions that you have, please put it up in the comment section. Take care, people. God bless.